On today's show, a breakdown of the Capitals' 2025-2026 schedule next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the past 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, I want to thank you for making this your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, it is a make or break for Hendricks Lapierre. The Capitals signed him to a 1-year prove-it deal. Prove it to the Capitals that you belong. Is he up for that third-line center position? And if not, what is the future of Lappy in D.C.? I'll talk about that a bit later while we're talking about moves that could be made. As the Capitals did not make any big moves, or they haven't so far, what is the thought on Jared McCann or Brian Rust? I'll talk about that, but just to get it going here, the schedule was released recently here, and going to do a breakdown on it, where the Capitals start, where it ends, and already getting excited for the 25-26 season. And it's interesting that, the Capitals made it to the second round, a summer push, if you will, and the summer isn't quite as long as it was for some teams that didn't make it to the playoffs at all, but still chomping at the bit for hockey because, that is what we do here at Locked On Capitals. I'm loving some Capitals hockey, and I cannot wait for it to all commence. We know here that more players, I would expect in late July or August, to show up at MedStar Ice Complex on a voluntary basis as things start to ramp up. Listen, certain players show up earlier than others. Some young players are trying to work on their game and kind of be in the good graces, I guess you could say, of the Capitals organization. It's not as far away as you may think. So let's talk about the schedule, the 25-26 schedule. Can you believe it? I'm here to tell you the time flies. Just seemed like the season was wrapping up, and already we're talking about the 25-26 season, and we're getting Boston on opening night. Quite something. The kickoff of 25-26, October 8th. How apropos, Alex Ovechkin, the Grade 8, Capital One Arena, national TV on TNT, and all eyes on DC to kick off the year. I expect the Capitals to pick up the torch and continue what they did last year. The Bruins, they're not going to make it easy for the Capitals as they want to get out of the funk that they were in last year. They made some moves. I think there's going to be quite a bit of changes in Boston, and it's not going to be easy for the Capitals. And that's the important thing to remember. Just how, you got to remember how teams played last year isn't necessarily how they're going to play this next year. And, historically, the Bruins have always brought it. And who else but Alex Ovechkin plastered on the season graphic? Am I right? And makes sense. He's 3 goals away from 900. Just think about that. 900 goals. That very well could happen in the first week, if you can believe it. Quite a start to the 25-26 season, if in fact that is the case. Now, the last time the Caps opened again at home against Boston, that was all the way back in 2022. And I say all the way back because, again, we're going into 25-26 and it's going. And it was a loss, 5-2 loss. Haven't won a season opener since 2021 when Ovi passed Marcel Dion. So the drought's real, and the Bruins aren't going to make it easy for the Capitals. But a good litmus test, right? A good measuring stick to see what this team is made of. And You take a look at the Capitals last year, dropping game number one of the regular season, and Spencer Carbery was not afraid of making changes. So just, at some point here, the closer we get to the season, late summer, early fall, September, August, September-ish, you're going to start hear rumblings about, line combos and that kind of thing. And, for the most part, I don't think it's going to catch anyone by surprise, but don't be, surprised if what you see sketched out in the summer is not, in fact, how it plays out to start the season. But right after that, the Capitals hit the road October 11th. Islanders at UBS Arena. And the historic significance of that, of course, is the same rink where Ovi broke Gretzky's record. Kind of poetic, isn't it? And October 12th, the Rangers at MSG, tough back to back. Okay, two teams that, and this is going to be the common theme here. I expect the Bruins to take a step forward, but also the Islanders. Under some new leadership there, some big additions to that team that, the Islanders that we saw last year are going to be quite a bit different this year. Now, I understand a lot of those moves were draft moves and that kind of thing, and those won't pan out probably to start the season, but they were busy as well. The Rangers, again, another team that is going to try to claw back in. As we did our early season predictions last year for Locked On Hosts, I predicted the Rangers to finish number one and the Capitals number two. Didn't nail that one. And you talk about the Rangers, kind of a riches to rags story last year, that I don't think that will be the case next season. Then some home cooking, a big 4-game homestand, October 14th to the 21st. Lightning, Wild, Canucks, Kraken, no nights off. A whole lot of Locked On Capitals, a whole lot of game breakdowns. Make sure, subscribe, follow, wherever you find your podcasts. This is your home for Capitals hockey. Some people say, we're a Capitals podcast. Year-round, Locked On Capitals. Keep it right here. And some other games to watch. Halloween, Islanders again. Black Friday, Leafs in town. I love when the Capitals play against the Leafs. And, Alex Ovechkin, he really loves playing against Canadian teams. Always exciting. New Year's Eve, Rangers, 12:30 p.m. matinee. Exciting. January 3rd, Connor Bedard and the Blackhawks. A lot of fun games this season. Again, if you can't tell, I'm already very excited about next season. And the one thing I guess I'm not looking forward to too much, and I guess you can tell why, is, well, I do a show like this and game breakdowns after are tough. And just from, the person watching it at home is tough as well, as the Caps' longest road trip is a 6-game West Coast swing in late January. Late games and, East Coast time, Central, wherever you happen to live, as long as you're not on Pacific or Mountain time, those are going to be some late games. Fun games, to watch. Sometimes people don't watch them until the next day. But in any event, I'm not really a big fan for that reason alone. Starts in Colorado, ends in Detroit. That stretch is going to be brutal and could totally shift the standings. And, there were seasons, not too long ago that the Capitals struggled on West Coast trips. It's actually been longer than I can recall here, but I'm talking Kings, Ducks, Sharks, that kind of thing, that the Capitals have fared better against those teams because in certain cases, I'm talking the Ducks and the Sharks aren't quite as good as they were a handful of years ago. And February, the NHL pause for the Olympics, first time since 2014. That's exciting as well. And, historically, some really big Capitals players have partaken in that. So exciting. I love the Winter Olympics, not just for hockey. Of course, that's my favorite, but everything else, Winter Olympics, I enjoy watching that over the Summer Olympics. And Marty Faravari already locked in for Slovakia. So if you want vested interest or a reason to watch the Olympics, you got a reason, and you got to think the guys like Sandin and maybe Dubois could be going too. So exciting. And, don't get too complacent. Don't let the hockey season get too far from your mind, because it's going to be here sooner than you can think. And again, Locked On Capitals, we will be talking about Capitals hockey all summer long. So yeah, we've got big milestones, divisional heat, and a real shot to start strong. The only thing that's missing now is a roster move or two. And I'll talk about that in the next segment here. As you take a look at this team, I expect them to take steps forward. As I record this, in July, not a lot of big moves yet. I'm talking Declan Chisholm. I'm talking sort of okay moves, but nothing that just really grabs you and shakes you. That I expect the core, the nucleus, to pick up where they left off last year. You look at the departures, Radish, Mangiapane, Alexiev, these kind of guys, kind of minimal impact players. So I don't expect the Capitals to take too many steps back. I think the addition of Sortif, I think the addition of Declan Chisholm, albeit depth pieces that remains to be seen where they factor in, and Ryan Leonard, Andrew Crystal, this could be one of the more exciting Capitals seasons in recent memory. A lot to be excited about. I hope you guys are buckled up and ready to go because the hockey season is going to be here sooner than you think. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about two moves, maybe. I'm still waiting for some kind of move to take place. I cannot believe we'll go into next season with no big moves. Would Jared McCann or Brian Rust be a good fit on the Capitals? I'll discuss straight ahead. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about great memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That is where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with killer last-minute deals. Tired of endless scrolling trying to find the best deal? Game Time Zone Deals pick the best seats in your section for you. Ever wonder what the view will actually look like before you buy? The app shows you a panoramic seat view, so there are no surprises. Listen, I don't know if you guys have been paying attention. There are a lot of great bands, a lot of great artists on tour right now, and you need someone in your corner. That is why you need Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON. NHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So in segment 2 here, we're talking about moves, and this is a shout out to someone on YouTube. I'm sorry, I forget your name. It was in passing. You were commenting on a move, and one of the players that you mentioned was Jared McCann. You know who you are because you mentioned it to me on YouTube. Again, feel free to communicate with me all summer on Twitter, on YouTube for suggestions, players you want to hear about, that kind of thing. But Jared McCann and also Brian Rust. Two names that I heard from one person on YouTube and one on Twitter X of intriguing names. So let's dive into that. Would they be a good fit? And we'll see where they would sneak into the lineup. And is it even doable? Let's dive into that in segment number 2 here. And the Capitals missed on some big free agents this summer. Wah, 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 the agony of defeat. And I say that in jest, as I'm not really that bummed about it. I am very excited about the youth this next season. I think that this is a good opportunity, as good as any, to prove if they're worth their salt. But it is still my belief that it would be advantageous to acquire some, veterans. on this team as well. And, I know this team wants to go younger, but you still need veterans. And there are veterans, but I would like to plug at least some of the holes with some NHL ready talent. But to reflect back on the swings and misses, they didn't land Roslovic. Didn't go all in on a scoring winger. And there's still some question marks in the top 9. They made some depth moves, like I talked about, sort of. Chisholm. I talked about the players that they signed that most likely will be sent to Hershey to plug the holes in the roster in Chocolatetown as well. So let's talk about 2 names that might, and I stress might, be available via trade: Jared McCann and Brian Rust. Let's start with McCann here. 29 years old, not old, not young. And, before you say, I thought you wanted this team to get younger, still not that old, under 30, and a good presence on this team, ostensibly. 2 years left on his deal at $5 million per team friendly. The back of his hockey card put up 243 points in 315 games since joining Seattle. He was their expansion draft gem. Big shot, quick release, can play both wing spots. And now Seattle, they've got forwards coming up: Berkeley Catton, Jake O'Brien, Carson Rekhoff, and they might be ready to cash out early on McCann instead of waiting for the 2027 deadline. It gets tougher. If the Caps could offer a younger blue liner, maybe there's a fit, as it is the perception that Seattle will be in the market for a blue liner. Again, I don't want to touch any of the top prospects, kind of who they're going to reach for, like your Vinny Iorio, those kind of players that I understand you got to give up something to get something, but I just hope that it's well thought out, I guess I could say. But when you take a look at it, I think that McCann could be a good option. Then the other player of which I'm speaking is Brian Rust. I know he's 33 years old, but man, he just had a 30-goal year with Crosby. Rust is signed through 2028 at $5.125 million. Not exactly cheap, but consistent. And consistency would serve the Capitals well. Again, I referenced Mangiapane, Radish, these kind of guys. Players that, I'm going to just talk about Radish for a moment. I didn't real have high hopes. I'm like, maybe he's going to have a bounce back season. And I remember Mangiapane lighting it up for Calgary, but both players showed snippets of greatness. So if they could get a McCann here or a Rust, I think that those would be upgrade players over some of the departures. They don't have NHL ready prospects. So, you're talking about here for a moment about the Pittsburgh Penguins and what they want. That is a team that is trying to, I think, take a page from the Capitals, and they are trying to change on the fly. They are trying to tear it down quickly. Again, somewhat similar to what the Capitals did. The Capitals, I think, will be a little less painless than what the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to go through. But, as far as T is concerned, not exactly cheap. Like I said, can move up and down the lineup, kills penalties, brings playoff experience, and honestly, Pittsburgh might be retooling anyway. They will be. No might about it. A revision to what I wrote down there. And, if you're Chris Patrick, you might offer, again, they are looking for blue line depth. It could be a Vinny Iorio or something of that nature, maybe a pick 2 as a bit of a sweetener. And it ultimately could make sense for both sides. And, I understand they are, they're bitter rivals, of course, but the Capitals have made deals with the Pens in the past. Think Orpik, Niskanen come to mind. It could be a good upgrade because, like I said, if we go into this next season without any big additions, I'm okay. But with the addition of a bigger name player like Rust, who had a 30-goal season, or McCann, I think that could be good as well. 2 players that put up big points, veteran players, 29 years old and 33 respectively, not the youngest players, but again, you also need some veteran players out on the lineup because do you value scoring or keep the youth movement going? That is the question that Chris Patrick is going to have to answer. If the Caps, in my opinion, are truly going for it in what could be Ovi's final year, a Rust or a McCann deal might make a whole lot of sense. Again, it's still my belief. I hear a tremendous amount of things from you guys on Twitter and YouTube, and I love hearing from you, even though we have different opinions, that if this is in fact, and I believe it is, Ovi's final year, why not build a truly great team around him? A Rust or a McCann could definitely bolster this team and make them better than they were last year. Honestly, not the only move that I think that needs to be made. I think they could add 2 veterans, however that manifests itself, if the price is right. I think that Chris Patrick is smarter than previous GMs around the NHL and even some former Capitals GMs, that he's not desperate. He's not going to make a trade for trade's sake. Like the talk is out there that we want a couple players to make this team better. He's not going to, sell out a young Capitals prospect to accomplish that. And I respect the heck out of that. And I think that, if the right player is available, fine. And if not, I am totally fine rolling in to 25-26 season. I know people said, Dan, you said that they need some other guys. They do. But if they don't have the right players available, let's roll in with the youth movement. Let's go. Let's get it. Let's have the Capitals make another deep playoff push. All right, so coming up here after the break, it is Hendricks Lapierre's time to shine. Make or break. Will he make or break? Straight ahead. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. The best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. In the final segment here, I talk to you again about Hendricks Lapierre because I got a feeling that we are going to see the best Hendricks Lapierre this fall. Why, you ask? He understands the nature of his deal. The Capitals signed him to a bridge deal, a 1-year deal. A young player, generally speaking, the Capitals don't sign a player that young that's in the organization to a 1-year deal. That was a shot across the bow of Hendricks Lapierre. Get the message, bring it this year, or it could be on to the next one next season. So there's a lot at stake at Hendricks Lapierre. For Hendricks Lapierre, I don't want to go down any negative tributaries to say that he's not going to work. It didn't work in previous seasons. That's not to say that it's not going to work this season. Again, I expect that we will see the best Hendricks Lapierre competing for what could be a center position. I ultimately, knee-jerk reaction thing, Connor McMichael will in fact get that third line center position. I expect Hendricks to start the season on the wing. But what do we know? Sometimes the best laid plans go to waste if for some reason there's any faltering, any failing, any injury, then Hendricks Lapierre could be a good option. Let's dive into that in the final segment because let's be clear here. It didn't work out on the Capitals last season, but had the right attitude, went to Hershey and played some lights out hockey. So I don't want to hear anything too disparaging about him. A good attitude, and really, I think, kind of saved himself in the eyes of the Capitals by having a strong season in Hershey. And talking about Hendricks Lapierre, it is the time. This is year 5 since the Caps drafted him, and we still don't have a clear answer. Now, don't get me wrong, the talent's there. You see the hands, you see the speed, but consistency, two-way play, that's where it's been shaky. And much like Connor McMichael before him, as they were around the same time, is consistency. They struggled with consistency. Connor McMichael figured that part out. I think that Hendricks Lapierre understands what's at stake. If he wants a future with the Capitals, if he wants a future in the NHL, he's going to have to bring it. Because even though I talk about moving on to the next one, people, GMs, they're going to see the back of his hockey card. They're going to look at his analytics and see that he didn't perform. There's a lot at stake. Again, he started last season at the third line center position, didn't hold on to it, got sent to Hershey. But credit to him, he didn't pout. He produced, get it, 32 points in 32 AHL games, plus 3 moves in the playoffs. This isn't beer league hockey. This isn't Kuznetsov showing up at MedStar, scoring some goals in front of some beer leaguers. This isn't Connor McDavid showing up surprisingly at a beer league game. This was legit. American Hockey League, just one click down from the NHL, still professional hockey. That's quite an accomplishment. So, if I'm shooting arrows, I'm giving applause. He knocked it out in Hershey. Now, he's back on that 1 year, $850,000 bridge deal. You understand the lay of the land. You understand the message being sent. 1 year, message one, $850,000. That's not a lot for a player of his projected caliber, right? So I think he gets it. This is it. Make the team contribute or someone else takes your spot. What do we know? The Capitals, the last few years, have knocked it out of the park at the draft. I'm talking, players that could be very well in the mix that are going to be fighting and clawing, and there's only so many spots available. I'm talking Miro. He's going to want to fight for those spots. Andrew Crystal is going to fight. We got Leonard already in the mix. That there's not a lot of open holes. Hendricks, we're going to need to see a Hendrix Lapierre like we have never seen before. And the competition is real. I mean, let's just break it down. Connor McMichael has the inside track at 3C. Even Miroshnichenko wants middle 6 role. Crystal is pushing. Again, one of the last players cut at in the fall. I mean, it was just right there. And Ethan Frank still has that scores mentality. He's a name that I think gets lost in this mix as well, is, Ethan Frank, the guy with the need for speed. He's going to definitely be battling for spots as well. I liked what I saw, with him in spots last season. And Sonny Milano, I'm going to try to reserve my opinion on what I think Sonny Milano. I'm going to tell you what I think here is that we've seen, glimpses of greatness from him as well. Again, anytime I have like a notebook of notes about players and when they came here, and I remember looking back on it, initially was projected to be with the Hershey Bears, but really kind of popped off the page when he first joined the Capitals. My notes I had written down, had a good nose for the puck, put himself in a good spot. And to be clear here, again, given credit where credit's due, there have been glimpses of true greatness from Sonny Milano. I understand last season he faced some ambiguous injury. Some people could say it was roster management. In any event, that he's going to have his kick at the can as well. And if not, he could be viewed as an expendable piece. So where does Lappy fit in? Probably on the wing. At least to start. The organization doesn't want to start him playing at center if he can't handle the matchup responsibilities. Again, we don't want to go down that road again with the third line, and more specifically, the third line center as a weakness. We don't want to have to, trade for a Lars Eller-esque type player. But here's the thing. This year isn't about the flashy plays. It's about being responsible. I don't think there's a lot that Hendricks Lapierre has to change. Protect the puck, make smart reads, and drive play without turning it over. If you can check those boxes, you're in, kid. You did it. Don't overthink it. Don't grip the stick too hard. Just follow the checklist, and it's good. You will be in the lineup. Again, you in the proof's in the pudding, as I say. If you went down to Hershey and just it was a suck fest down there, then I would take all of that back, but put up some good points. I believe in him this year. I think he can do it this year, kid. If he does that, he could stick around long term. But if not, and I hate to say this, the team might be looking at giving him a fresh start somewhere else. And, if it doesn't work with the Capitals, he's probably looking at an AHL deal somewhere. Or I guess, maybe a team that's looking for a reclamation project, maybe like Buffalo or Anaheim or something like that. But in any event, he's going to have to bring it. Let's just keep the negativity out. Let's see what he has before I cast any dispersions on him here. It's not about can he be good anymore. It's will he put it all together. I'm pulling for you here, Hendricks. I really think that you have what it takes. The Capitals definitely are giving it their most valiant effort to try to make a spot for him. It would have been an easy thing to do, I think, for Brian McClellan before Chris Patrick, or Chris Patrick now, to bundle him in a deal and get him anywheresville out of DC, but they didn't do that. They got the faith. They got the faith in young Hendricks that he can get it done. Let's just all believe. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt that he can do it. And, we'll let him control his own destiny. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On NHL, as they have you covered 5 days a week, available wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.